Good evening, everybody. Tonight's Planning Commission meeting is December 7th, 2021.
Recording in progress.
6:30, and the first thing on the agenda is the Pledge to Allegiance. If everybody stand up. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 on the agenda tonight is well, before we even start on item number 3, we just want to welcome our newest member to the Planning Commission, and that's Frank Ramgish. Ramish. I thought that's what I said, Frank. Is it Ramish or Ramish?
Ramish.
Okay.
R-A-M.
Okay. I know it's German, so. But welcome aboard. Really appreciate it that you're here tonight. The first item on the agenda, number 3 on the agenda, is the motion approval of tonight's meeting agenda. Wait, before we even start, we just want to understand something here on this motions tonight. When we get down to the public hearing, we got public hearing number 6 and public hearing number 7. Even though they're two different agendas, they're all under the same public hearing, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will have one hearing. Ella will read both notices and you'll open up the hearing at the same time. And there will be two separate presentations, but we will then take questions for either topic.
Okay. So that it'll be when we open it up to the public, they can talk on either topic.
Yes.
6 or 7. Okay. Anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda tonight?
This is Barb. So moved.
Chris, I'll second.
Any discussion? We'll take a vote. Bob?
Bob, aye.
Barb, aye.
Ron, aye.
Chris, aye.
Frank, aye.
We'll go on to item number 4, which is approval of October 5th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting minutes. I'll make a motion that we approve it.
This is Barb. I'll second it.
Any discussion? Any issues? None? We'll take a vote. Chris? Oh,
Chris, aye.
Oh, yeah. Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bob, aye.
Frank, aye.
Well, I think you should abstain on that one, Frank.
Yeah, you
Oh, because you weren't here on that one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Item number 5 on the agenda is a motion approval of November 2nd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting minutes. I make a motion to approve it.
This is Barb. I'll second that.
Any discussion? Any issues? Hearing none. Chris?
Chris, aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bob, aye.
Okay, we'll go on to item number 6. It's a public hearing. Bonfire Farmstead preliminary plat, pages 1 through 32, and enclosure A. And Ella, would you read the notice that's posted in the Forest Lake Times?
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the City of Columbus Planning Commission on Wednesday, December 7th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as parties may be heard. The hearing will be conducted in person and by interactive technology at the Columbus City Hall, located at 16319 Kettle River Boulevard, Columbus, Minnesota, to consider a request for a preliminary plat, Bonfire Farmstead, creating 2 reconfigured lots in the Highway Commercial Zoning District. Members of the public interested in attending in person or monitoring the meetings should contact the city offices at 651-464-3120 or visit the city website for information at columbusmn.us. The hearing shall continue until all evidence and testimony has been received. Applicant is Classic Construction, Inc. Property owners is 3 Beacon Holdings, LLC. Property location 14946 Hornsby Street and adjacent 19.03 acres vacant property. Legal description as written. Signed Elizabeth Mersko, Zoning Administrator. Posted and submitted to Forest Lake Times on November 17th, 2022. Posted and published in the Forest Lake Times on November 24th of 2022.
Thank you, Ella. At this time, would the applicants of Classic Construction Incorporated and 3 Beacon Holding LLC, Blaine Brothers, please come up and have a seat up here in the chairs, and who's ever going to do the talking. And for the record, we'd like everybody to state their names and addresses and what position they hold.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dean Daly, owner of Blaine Brothers Truck Line and our other companies.
Tucker Daly, General Manager, Blaine Brothers.
Kurt Strandland, owner, Classic Construction. Do you want the address you see?
Yeah, but could you put your address?
18542 Ulysses Street, Northeast, East Bethel.
Okay.
Blaine Brothers, 10011 Xylite, that's XYLITE Street, Blaine, Minnesota.
Fasoto 1131 72nd Avenue Northeast, Fridley, Minnesota 55443.
Well, thanks a lot, everybody. It's been 8 months to a day since we seen you here last.
Wow.
I know, it was April 6th. But anyway, we received your application for a preliminary plat and the proposed truck line plan unit development and the conditional use permit. As is normal protocol, we always ask the applicants to explain their operation and what they plan to do on this property. So we'll give you some time. I know you explained it at the concept hearing that we had in April, but for the public hearing, we got to have it now. If you just give your best shot, Dean or Tucker or Kurt, and we'll go from there.
And Mr. Daly, just for protocol here, the preliminary plat is first, so if you want to go through the plat first and then your conditional use permit, up on the screen now they have the preliminary plat. So if you go through what you're going to do with the land first and then go into your business, that would fall into place with how it's on the agenda.
Perfect. So this year, we were able to acquire the tillable acres, the approximately 20 acres, somewhat of an L shape. And then we also acquired the residential space there, making a total of just over 25 acres. Our intentions were to acquire that property to house our company, Blaine Brothers Truck Line. On the north portion of it, that's shown as Lot 1. That is where we intend on putting that facility. And on Lot 2, there has been some talk with the city regarding the residential, or the home, the residence. At this time, we do believe that home will be demolished at the end of the lease period, which when we purchased the home, they have a lease for up to 2 years while they're building a new home and having that work done. So again, at the end of that, whenever it might be, whether it's a year or 2 years from now, we intend on taking the home down. I had, excuse me, I had stated earlier that maybe we would leave it up for, other company use. I don't believe that'll happen now. So we will look to sell the south, I think I saw just slightly over 12 acres with the, just the combined pieces that'll be to the south of the 150th Street.
Okay, Dean, you could pull the mic a little farther up closer to you, but you're saying you're looking at selling that property then after?
The property to the south of 150th, yes.
Okay. As one whole lot?
Yet to be decided. Today it is listed as Lot 2, but it could be broke into smaller
And when you
pieces.
talk
Again,
about demolishing the house, you're talking about the silo and the whole works there? Isn't there a silo there?
There is an old silo. The
Yeah, I
top
mean,
is.
you're talking about cleaning the whole area up then.
Yes, yes, it would all be changed.
And I think, how many buildings are there? There are 3 or?
Well, there's the home. There's an old building that's in very poor condition. Yeah, that's from, I'd say, original farmstead. There's another, I'll say, 3-sided shed just to the south of that, then a garage. So total of 4, obviously. And then the silo that's.
Okay. I just, in the beginning, I kind of wondered in the beginning if you were going to put a road back just for your business, but you decided to go this route now with 150th, building a road back with the cul-de-sac to split the properties up.
Yes. Yes, this layout was done by Widsith, with input from us, but again, at the present time, we're just going with Lot 2 as a single piece for now, and if the need arises, we would consider smaller lots in there, in that space.
Does anybody have any questions?
This is Chris. I just have one. When you say you're going to demolish the home, but then you kind of said you thought about possibly using it for a company purpose. Sewer hookup? I mean, is that not something in this case where when property is sold that they have to hook up to city sewer and water? So how is that handled?
In this particular case, we worked with the applicant, and he has an escrow agreement for the hookup of public utilities. And in this case, they asked for an 18-month to a 2-year period of grace, which we granted. And the current residents will be in the house till that time. And then there is, by June of, I believe it's by June of next year, the city will be told whether the house will be demolished or it will be hooked up to sewer and water. So it's a period of 2 years, but the criteria is that it will be hooked up in 2 years. It's not a 2-year grace and then you hook up. It's within those 2 years that there will be connected to public utilities if the house remains. If the house goes away and it's divided into smaller lots, then we will hook up to utilities accordingly. If it stays vacant, let's just say they decided they're going to hold it and they demolish the house, there will be no requirement to hook up to utilities, and they have prepaid for their utilities. So we do have money in escrow. So decisions to be made next year.
Perfect. And then the billboard, because, and I did speak with Dean about this. I know when we redid the billboard ordinance, we made one principal use for property. And Dean, I think you were saying that because they're both the existing home and the existing billboard, it's kind of, I'm not going to say grandfathered, but it's allowable right now. If the house stays and it doesn't get demolished, does that still exist, that condition? What happens with, I mean, does the billboard come down?
Yeah, I don't know the circumstances. Did the easement and billboard come with the land, or did it stay with the original owner?
We own the billboard.
Okay.
Where the home sits,
Yep.
that is not connected to the sign prior to our purchase or now.
Separate landowners.
Yeah.
Okay, so the resident does not does not own the billboard because you bought that. So now when they subdivide that, once they build on there or something, then that billboard would have to come down. Okay.
Then the billboard would come down and the term will probably come to an end.
Yeah. Okay.
That's something I'm unaware of, that hasn't been discussed at all, that I've been included in anyway, the billboard. We did pay the future, pay into the future to acquire that so that there wasn't any issue 5, 6, 7 years from now. So that space and the rights to that billboard, we acquired in the land purchase of the 19-acre piece. I'll say the somewhat L-shaped.
The L-shaped.
And that billboard, I believe that billboard has 19 years left. I mean, I think, I'm thinking that was one that was just renewed, I won't say renewed, but applied for. So that's why it has a longer term.
Under the new ordinance or the old, I mean, because the new ones are only 10 years.
I got to think about this one. I'll look up that.
And that's
for the
just so
next
you know,
discussion,
too,
yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at the term.
Okay. So those were just a couple questions with, you know, I mean, I see nothing wrong with the way it's subdivided. I know you've been working with the city as far as where the water main stubs ends and everything else, so, you know, that's wonderful. Thank you.
That billboard, that was Outback?
That one, it is Outback, and that's why I'm drawing a blank on that particular one. Because we renewed 2 and then we didn't renew, and that's why I don't know how many years are left
Okay.
on it, so, because I think Outback only has 2 billboards, and I think it was this property and the property south. I just don't remember what year they're in. Because one renewed and one did not.
Yeah, the one that,
Well, they had 2 that they refaced.
Yes, and they did
Yeah.
the bases to them, so I have to look that up.
they took the one down, didn't they? It's
They
already,
did, the one that was over the barn, you
Yeah.
know, at 145th, that one, actually, I think they took like 5 or 6 down, but they did take quite a few in that area down.
and then there's a private, isn't there one farther north then? That's Siebert's or?
Yes.
Okay.
The one on this property expires in June of 2031. It is owned by Outfront Media.
Out front, that's what it was. Thinking of the restaurant, Outback. My problem.
Out front. Yep.
Yeah, should have ate tonight.
And the base on this one that's on our property is upgraded. It's got the stone finish or whatever.
It's on your property then?
Yeah,
Yes.
which they still need to add the Columbus sign to, one of them. Second topic.
Bob or Barb, you have any questions on this plat?
Yeah, this is Bob. The only question I have is on the new road construction. I know that that's preliminary at this point. But turning north out of that new road with truck traffic, do you see that as being an issue going north in particular up Hornsby with the amount of trucks and trailers you might have on an average day? Do you see any traffic issues in that area based on your ability to come in and out of your property?
I certainly hope not. I don't foresee any issues.
Can you tell me about how many trucks and trailers per day you might see at that site?
Currently, and Mike, our branch manager for this facility, is in the back here. Normally, units coming in to the truck line business of ours are, for the most part, single unit trucks. They're not coming in nearly as often as some of our other locations, some of our other businesses come in truck and trailer. A unit's coming in for an alignment, it's just a tractor. It very well could have a trailer behind it because we're bringing a wrecked trailer in too.
Yep.
That all those different factors come in.
Sure.
I'll say darn near every one of them that comes into our other locations has a truck and trailer combination, but this one here could be, I'm sorry, I don't have a quick answer for you. It might
Okay.
be 20 units a day, it might be 30 units a day.
Okay. That gives me at least an idea of the amount of traffic that you could be dealing with coming in and out, so thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Oh, thank you, Bob. Barb?
I have no questions.
So can we, Elizabeth, can we just move on now, right to the next section? the
Yes.
CUP and the PUD and, okay, now we'll move to that.
Excuse me, can I ask one more question? Is there a reason there's no turn lane off of Hornsby? Is it because it's city?
We're still conducting a traffic study that was requested, and that has not been completed
Okay,
to tell us if it's going to be needed.
Before construction, we'll have that resolved, but there is no traffic study at this point for turn movements in either direction. If that's required, then that will become a requirement of the project.
okay, thank you.
I would want to remind planning commissioners as well, sometimes you're used to getting a preliminary plat and a final plat. We are reviewing and will ultimately make recommendation only on a preliminary. And so whether it's a month or 3 months, they'll be coming back with a final plat. And we would hope that that issue regarding any kind of traffic controls on Hornby will be resolved by then.
And at that time, too, any of the engineers or the city works or the public works comments and that will be addressed and put on the final?
Yes.
As far as road width and just,
And if you had the time, we haven't really discussed or debated this in any detail. If I could just take a moment, at our staff meeting last week, it was discussed with the city engineer and the public works director that there is no turnaround, no formal cul-de-sac, no hammerhead, no nothing at the south end of Feller to the north of this. And it's a problem for not the general public, but our vehicles, city vehicles going in. And as a result of that staff meeting discussion, we have approached Blaine Brothers and suggested that we would like to talk about acquiring at least a portion of that cul-de-sac from their northwest corner, and that would impact the parking lot. It's appropriate to bring up at the plat discussion, but we'll talk about it again during the conditional use permit. The engineer's comments also regarded looping the water main, which otherwise would be a dead end within the new proposed 150th Street, and we have a current dead end at the south end of Feller. And we've discussed this with Blaine Brothers, and there may even be some benefit for shorter water main connections to the building itself, depending on where that line came. But we would be requiring additional easements for that. If it ran right through the middle of the parking lot on the building, which again doesn't show up on the plat, that obviously would require a city easement. It could also go on the west side of the parking lot and be within basically the setback area. And these are just issues that haven't been resolved yet and will be. If we get to a point in 2 weeks where we're making a recommendation on both the plat and the conditional use permit, we'll make conditional approval recommendations that incorporate these, and a final clarification on the billboard issue.
You confused me a little there, Dean. So was the thought about bringing Feller farther south?
No, it is just enough land. In this case, what we approached Blaine Brothers about was a 60 by 120 feet piece of land at the end of Feller, but in their northwest corner of the property. The other 60 by 120 feet would be to the north on other property. So what we've asked is, would they consider selling us land, the right-of-way, so that the city could extend a true cul-de-sac, which at this time has no benefit to Blaine Brothers, really has no benefit to existing businesses on Feller, but it is a benefit to the city. And so these discussions are on the table. Worst case, if this cost an arm and a leg, a lot of money, I know the Public Works Department would simply say, we can't recommend doing this, and it would drop. It would be a dead issue. anytime we plat in any community, you look at dead-end roads and you think, is there merit in connecting the roads themselves? In this case, we saw no benefit. But also with water mains in particular, you attempt to eliminate dead-end water mains all the time, every community. And so that also came after my memo was written from the Public Works Director and the city engineer, and we presented that to Blaine Brothers, and they're amenable to studying this. We just don't have the answers since last Thursday when we put this on the table.
Okay.
So no intention to extend the road
Yeah.
beyond a cul-de-sac. And half of that cul-de-sac could potentially be on the Blaine Brothers property. Otherwise, no other impact or connection to their development. Probably lose 5 to 10 parking spaces.
So it's more or less on plowing or stuff like that.
It's a maintenance and safety issue when we're driving vehicles and you got to back them up 300 feet because there's no turnaround.
It is a tough spot down there when you get in there because they got Harold's Towing and all that trailers there, and it's just a dead end. I don't know how semis get in there and out unless they're backing. Well, now that, are we complete with the plot, preliminary plat?
We are, yes.
Yep.
All right, so now we can move on to the PUD and the CUD, and this is your business, kind of what your operations, if you want to explain that a little more in depth. We did read your narrative and all that, and after our concept hearing, but I guess this is the meat and the bones of what you want to do there. So, Dean, if you can do it, or Tucker, or whoever wants.
I can speak to this again. So our meeting back in April, I think I'd estimated a 25,000 square foot building. Today with the footprint, what do we have in the footprint? 46,000. That's the total square foot, 46,000. 39,000. 39 on the footprint. So the facility has grown in size. Still using the same amount of land space, but the facility has grown in size with what we believe we need to build for. Do you want me to go through history, those kinds of things?
Yeah,
Again,
explain just how your operation runs for the public. I know we'll ask some questions here in a minute, but when we open up to the public, we'd like to, some of them weren't here April 6th.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So Blaine Brothers was actually started back in 1979 by my dad and his brother, just out of an old Ford pickup truck. As it states in here, maybe it doesn't state all this in there. We bought his brother out in '83. My dad left the company in '94. I eventually bought him out. Since then, it's myself and a lot of really good guys. We're close to 400 employees now total with the different locations and different companies. We do also own a company called North American Trailer. Their headquarters is down in Inver Grove Heights. In 2013, we acquired Truck-A-Line, this business that we're relocating, along with Hydraulic Specialty. So there's 4 business units that are all operated independent from one another. We have locations from the oil fields of North Dakota over 2 different locations over into Wisconsin and Minnesota here, of course. Truck-A-Line has outgrown their facility darn near from the day we bought it. So again, our intentions are here to build them a nice new updated facility that'll be much more efficient and effective for all of our guys and for future growth of that company.
So are all 3 of these are Truck-A-Line, Blaine Brothers, are they all going to operate out of this facility here then?
No, sir.
This Truck-A-Line?
Just Truck-A-Line.
Okay, so Truck-A-Line does truck repair?
Medium to heavy duty frame, suspension, and alignment work on trucks and trailers.
No engine work or?
No, that we might, because of the size of this building, we might put different work in there, but this would not be say an engine, necessarily an engine facility like our Blaine Brothers down in the city of Blaine, or our Inver Grove facility in Inver Grove. Those are a couple of the bigger engine shops.
So transmissions, rear ends, suspension? Like if I came in with a tandem tractor and he had a couple broken springs,
Absolutely.
you would handle that?
Yes.
Truck line?
Yes.
But once it gets into the motor and all that, in transmission, you're out of it?
Engine overhaul stuff, again, would most likely go to our other locations. Maybe some bolt-on items, alternators, the external pieces may be done up here at truck line.
Okay. Before we get into a lot more questions, I'm just going to ask probably Kurt and all of you, just for tonight's for the record, did you receive a copy of the report developed by Dean Johnson on Resource Strategies Corporation dated November 30th, 2022 regarding your applications? And this is regarding the preliminary plat. Mr. Johnson noted 14 findings of fact and 10 recommendations. Do you have any questions about those or any comments? We're going to split this up real quick here on that preliminary plat. Kurt, or?
I think the only question that was a little bit open was the cash in lieu of parkland dedication fee, what that amount is.
All right, well,
I can answer that. Mr. Chair and Planning Commission members, the parkland dedication fee in the commercial district is $762.50 per lot. So as Dean indicated earlier, it's $1,525.
I don't think there was any other questions that we have not talked
on the
with you
preliminary
about.
plat, right?
Correct.
Okay, now let's go to the PUT and the conditional use permit. Mr. Johnson noted 31 findings of fact and 15 preliminary recommendations for our December 21, 2022 meeting. Do you have any comments or questions about those, or do you understand what he was stating in there?
Yes, sir, I understand them. They're all, we've talked to them about them, or we are clear on all of them.
So you understand, no comments, no questions?
No, I don't
Dean?
believe so. I guess they're on number 25, the landscaping. Our landscaping plan shows more than what the city code requires. Can we reduce some of that to the code, to meet the code?
Well, I guess we're going to get into that here in a minute.
Okay.
That's a good point, though. We'll bring that up. But other than that, is that about the only issue you have on the PUD or the CUP or on Dean's? I'm sure it's an ongoing process. You're still talking with Dean Johnson about it, but I just want to make sure that you understand what's down on the paper right now, and just for the record.
Okay.
So, and
I did just, one of the others that I did have just, and this will come up later too, I'm certain, but just in regards to the signage.
the signage?
Yeah, the permitting for signage. We do have it shown on some of these prelim drawings.
There's two ways to do signage. One is you process if you know what signage, and if this is the signage that you would like, you can get it permitted with the conditional use permit. If this is just what you think you want, you really don't know what your signage is going to be, you would come through with your building permit with a sign plan, and as long as the sign plan met the code, we would process it with the building permit. We now have, whether it's a freestanding sign or a wall sign, you do have to process a building permit. Wall signs need wall bracing now, and freestanding signs needs footings. So both of them have to go through the building department. So it's a $200 fee for a sign application, and it's all encompassing. You give us a sign plan from your sign company. So if it's directional signs, wall signs, whatever, what plan you come in, you submit the plan, we process it, and we send it on to the building department. So it's just a matter of when you're ready, or if you're ready now, we process it with the conditional use permit. If you're not ready now, we process it with the building permit.
Everything's okay then?
Yeah, yep, as long as there isn't any issues with what's shown on here. There could be a couple more added, just, but nothing bigger than what's on there, so.
Okay. We're going to open it up for the commissioners to ask some questions, but I'll start off now about your operation. And one of them is, I know you say it's truck line, and you're going to be doing alignments and that on trailers and tractors being semis or whatever, tandems or whatever. And we've asked this earlier, and I think in the questions about how many vehicles are going to be sitting outside. You've got like 90 parking lots out there. Isn't that, how many are on the list?
92,
92?
I believe so.
Yeah, and I know that you make the comment that you're going to have 50 employees there working. So I don't know how many are mechanics or how many are doing the alignments, but that's a lot of parking spots.
But they have an additional 125 that are in the front of the building that I think are more for the employees and customers for cars. The 92 is just what's the secured parking area for your tractor trailers that you would have sitting there. So there's 125 and 92.
Yeah, there's a lot
Plus
of-
16, I think, for box trucks or something.
Yeah, there are a couple outside the gate there.
Yep.
I'll say work holding, waiting to come in the yard. So it's
there's a lot of
customer and
parking.
employee parking for the automotive out in the front of the building
But my question kind of getting to you, Dean, is,
on the east side.
yeah, how many mechanics are you going to have? I guess I can see moving equipment in to work on it, and you get it done and you put it outside in 7 days, but how many are sitting out there waiting to come in? I mean, that's why I'm looking at this 92, wondering, are you having, is a mechanic working on 2 vehicles at the same time, or, I mean, or are you just overshooting the parking? In other words, we're going to have more parking than we have customers out there.
I would say a little bit of yes to each of your questions. There are times when a tech might be working on a couple different pieces at the same time, but to keep us most efficient, when our guy brings a piece of equipment out into the yard, he parks that and grabs another and comes right back in. We need the parking spaces. If you look at any of our facilities, we have that parking for the equipment that's waiting to be come in the shop, get back to the customer. Maybe it's sitting out in the yard waiting for parts. Especially these last couple of years, it's been a real holdup for many pieces of equipment. So there are different factors. One thing that we've done over the years, we've built our facilities, excuse me, for what we expected the business to be, and we've been very fortunate, and it's filled up very quickly. So again, yes to your question, some of this is for future. And whether we're at 60 techs, or no, maybe not 60 techs in there, but 50 actual techs, and the staff then, support staff for them. We don't want to choke ourselves and have to build a brand new facility in 6, 8, 10 years from now. This building, this facility, we expect to have for a long darn time here, well into the future. And I can kind of, if I'm not, hopefully not overstepping here, our North American Trailer Company, they went from, they were in a 6,000 square foot old pole barn. And then another leased space, a separate lease space, because they just couldn't even survive where they were at. They were strangling themselves. We moved those guys, and I think it's included in some of the pictures here. They moved into a 98,000 square foot facility on 34 acres down in Inver Grove Heights. And that facility is full. So it came from less than, let's say the two combined, they came from less than 8,000 square feet. They're in 98,000, and our guys are full. So, and it is workload. It's not anything that's,
So American Trailer is going to stay down in Inver Grove Heights. It's not coming up.
absolutely, that's a
So
brand-new facility.
You're not moving equipment down there to park it up here.
Nope,
This is all stuff that's going to be serviced right here and out the door.
yes.
Okay, all right. And do you do fleets? I mean, do you have a
Yes.
contract like with a company that has 20 or 30 tractor trailers? Is that what your main customer is, or is it the over-the-road loan operator that comes in?
Our customer base is, again, just like you said, it's everything from an owner-operator to municipalities to the largest fleets in the country. Canadian carriers.
Okay, and, you know, I know on a trailer, there's, you know, there's not a lot of, how do I want to say, parts. I mean, there's parts, but like, let's see, a guy brings a trailer in and you change the springs on it. Where are you going to throw all this stuff? Is that going to be parked outside the springs, or do you have a trailer you throw it in, or what's the, I mean, when you're starting to gather iron, you know, some of these trailers or aluminum or whatever.
You want to go, Curtis? Yeah.
There is an enclosure shown to the east of the building that has,
Is this?
yes, that's it. Yep. That's constructed as the same materials as the building, looks very similar to a building.
That's the one with the tip-ups?
Yep,
That don't have tip-ups? Is that going to be storing this?
that's where recycling containers for metal and aluminum and just the trash that's produced will all be kept inside of there.
Okay, I seen it on your graph. I didn't know that's what it was for. I thought it was a trash bin. Yeah, I thought it was a glorified trash bin. I mean, with the tip-ups, I thought, wow. But that's what it's mainly for, springs and rims. Do you do tires too?
We do tires.
Okay, so where do they go? In the same area you're talking about?
They go back to our tire supplier. We do keep a very small amount. Our tires are shipped in and they're shipped out on the,
So you're not going to have tires sitting outside
no,
or rims
No,
laying
there's-
around? Or
no. There could be something that's outside for a short time, but it's not that we stockpile stuff all over the place. That's not the way
well,
we operate our stuff.
I know if you go, yeah, you know, it's like one of our council members always say, some of these things morph. You start throwing out rims or brake drums or something, and all of a sudden they start piling up. But that's what that main block is, for scrap iron and stuff that's supposed to get out there, not reusable used stuff. Everything goes. In other words, if you replace a part, you're not saving it for anything.
No. We do not deal in salvage parts. The stuff that we put on is new or refurbished, it could be. Again, kind of to this point, so we have separate bins for our aluminum, our cast, the different metals that the waste haulers, they bring in a new dumpster or bin. They take the full one and put the empty in, and our guys keep using those. So they're exchanged regularly.
So the way I look at that bin you got there, then that's facing the back of the building. So the one facing Hornsby will be just a straight tip-ups. You won't even see those bins in there then, right? Am I correct?
Correct, the doors are facing west,
Well,
the
they're,
gates.
they're going to have like garage doors on them?
There'll be gates
It's an
with
8-foot
screening.
Oh,
Yeah, it's synthetic wood, isn't it?
Yep.
okay. But as far as we're concerned, you don't plan to store things on this property with all those parking spots. It's just mainly stuff coming and going.
Yes, sir.
And what would you say is the longest period? I mean, would it be a week, 2 weeks, or?
Well, some of the crash stuff can definitely get extended, whether we're waiting for insurance approvals or we're waiting for parts, whatever it may be. And again, these last couple of years have proved extended periods, just lack of supply. But yeah,
So-
anything from a day to, we don't want anything there for more than a couple months. But if we're waiting for, again, approvals, supply chain, different things could be a couple months.
So I know previous to this, you're talking about storing like a crashed whole unit, the tractor and the trailer. If somebody crashes one of them, you might tow it in and park it there, then and work on both units? Or are you just strictly trailers?
No, we do trucks and trailers.
The whole works then? Huh?
Yeah, it could. I don't think we've had that happen anywhere where we've saved, I'm not going to say it couldn't happen, but I don't remember anything that's come into the other, the old location where it's a truck and trailer coming in from a crash. Maybe just the tractor came to our engine shop to have the engine checked over before it went to the body shop to have body work done, or before it came to our place to have framework done. There's several pieces to the puzzle.
Okay, and do you store tow trucks there too?
Our intentions right now are not to have tow trucks out of this facility. Our tow trucks right now are out of the Blaine facility, Clearwater and Scanlon.
So how do you get these trailers there? Does the customer brings them in, or do you go pick them up, or?
Most often, the customers bring them to this facility, although a couple of our other locations do all of the shuttle work. That's on regular trailer repair. That's not just crash stuff, but, so again, a little bit of both.
Mr. Daly, just a quick question here. You have park space and you're showing park space. These will be striped. Right? In other words, these trailers are going to be parked in a park space?
Yes,
So it'll be an organized lot. It'll look like a parking lot.
absolutely.
Anybody on the commission have any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. My name is Barb. I'm sure you're well aware that a lot of cities have banned semis and so forth from parking, St. Paul and Minneapolis for one, and drivers are having a hard time finding places to park their vehicles. Do you do any of that? Do you rent out spaces to semis for a day, a week, a month?
We do have a customer at our Blaine facility, one of the largest fuel haulers in the country, that does lease space from us. And a couple of the big local haulers also lease a couple parking spaces down there.
Okay. And is it just a daily thing or a weekly thing? Or, I mean, do they have an actual contract? So if they live in this area, I guess the problem truckers are having is that they have to drive around and find a spot that they can legally park at. And they don't have any options in Minneapolis anymore. So they kind of have a app for where they can find a place to park. So do you participate in that at all?
No.
No?
No. Again, the stuff that's parked on our lot down at Blaine, and this is not our intention for this space here, but at Blaine and at North American, actually, again, one of the large national carriers, we do the work on their equipment, and they do park that equipment there. They dispatch it out of that location. But we're not
You're not
on
part of
any
helping
app,
out?
we're not, no.
Okay. Anything?
Bob?
Yeah, this is Bob. I have a question for Frank and Dean. I'm trying to gain some clarity in why we're calling this a PUD and a CUP. Is it because there's two lots associated with this development? because what we heard is that one of the lots is going to be sold, so it's really strictly going to be north of the proposed road of 150th Avenue for their site for the CUP. And so I was just curious as to why we're calling it a PUD.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take that question. The applicant in the conditional use permit is seeking to modify originally one particular standard in the ordinance, and that was the color of the building, which consideration is allowable through the planned unit development procedure. If you had a chance to wade through my findings, I've also noted that there are automobile parking spaces that are 19 feet deep where they abut a curb, so there's room for vehicle overhang, and we have waived the 20 feet minimum standard. Similarly, I also noted in the photometric plan that there is an exceedance of one football on the brain, 1 foot candle at the property line, which abuts the freeway, where they have, I think it ranges from 1.1 to 1.3 foot candles instead of our maximum 1. Considerations of a parking waiver, performance standard like color of a building, or the performance standard like maximum foot candles at the property can be waived or modified through the planned unit development procedure. We don't do that as a standard application for just a regular conditional use permit. So that on the surface is the primary consideration. I think the city administrator explained an agreement with the previous owners of the property and the current buyers of the property, a temporary situation that allowed the home to remain on commercial property. If it isn't demolished, which I think the applicant pretty much said it's gonna go, it would have to be hooked up. I think that escrow agreement contains some $60,000 to take an existing home. If that residential use is perpetuated, and I'm going to go on record as your planning consultant to simply say, then I think it loses its nonconformity as a residence, and that building could be brought up to commercial code. They're not going to spend a dime attempting to do that. We've gone through that with Cityview Electric. They wanted to save that home. They were going to make a lunchroom when they found the codes that were required for sewer, water, electrical. I mean, it didn't matter. It couldn't be done. So there really is no planned unit development, if you will, that is necessary for the plat. This is strictly in relation to reviewing the conditional use permit.
That explained it perfectly, because that was my question. It didn't make sense to me why we were doing it.
Yeah, we have an unusual platting arrangement where an existing home, I think in all of your other plats, we've pretty much said it's gone. The one consideration regarded Cityview, they wanted to convert the residence into a commercial use, and we said that's fine. It's not going to be a residence, and when they found out what the costs were to take an older residential building and make it conform to commercial standards, it was abandoned. And why anybody would spend $60,000 to connect a home and then try to retrofit it is beyond me. That's a separate agreement that was negotiated with the city, the seller, and now the buyer prior to this happening. And if the home remains, in my estimation, I'm going to come back and say it's not going to stay as a residence. So if you want to connect it to sewer and water, that's fine, but you got to bring it up to commercial standards.
Thank you. One other question I have is, my experience with that area is that Hornsby is relatively elevated versus the actual elevation of the property. I don't know how high, how many feet elevation it is, but it comes down to the containment area for the waste parts. if they're proposing an 8-foot fence, if the road is elevated, that's essentially potentially looking down on top of all of that containment area. So I was just questioning the height of the fence at that point, based on the height of the road.
Mr. Chairman, if I could try to answer that. Unfortunately, the only copy of one of the site plans that illustrated rooftop mechanical systems, my copy is so small, even with my glasses, I can't read the elevations. If someone has that drawing, or we could put that one drawing up, this is from the architects, it's plan sheet X1.1, and it provides those elevations, but my eyes don't permit me to tell you what the floor elevation of the building is. And this plan sheet has the elevation of both 35 and Hornsby, so it will answer your question. I did not drive that street recently, and I can't confirm.
Elizabeth, that's going to be on page 12 of enclosure A, X 1.1.
Can you read that, Frank? Your eyes good enough, or can you blow that scale up on yours?
I'm in enclosure A.
You know where I'm talking about? Over here it gives the street elevation.
What did he say, Ella?
Over here it gives the freeway. And that should answer Bob's question. Are you sitting up and looking down into this parking lot, or is it pretty much at grade?
The street elevation, Hornsby, and the finished parking lot elevation are relatively the same height, in the
Same height.
902
Yeah.
range, 903. So it's,
Okay.
the 8-foot fence would be a full screening of 8 feet because of the street being at the same elevation.
Yeah, we've had developments further north from your proposed site that are
I can't read
actually
it.
6 to 8 feet in difference from the road down to the height of the actual property. So that answers my question. Thank you.
Yes.
My turn? Hi, this is Chris. I know on the one sheet, which would be A1.2, it calls out a berm and landscaping is what's called out, going along 150th, the new road. What's the height of the berm? I mean, there's not much room there, and part of what I'm asking this for is the berm there to kind of screen a little, or what?
It's just for aesthetics, yes, some screening.
So it's not that high?
It is not. It's mowable. It's like a
Okay.
4-to-1 slope.
Okay, so it's more aesthetic than screening?
Correct. There will be some, on the landscaping
Yep,
page.
I've seen that.
There is some trees and such planted there.
And that's part of what you want to reduce to meet the, be more in line with our ordinance?
Correct.
Okay. I know I've heard kind of, you don't plan on doing this, and the engine, and maybe in the future. Engine work is not going to be done here, correct? It is just the frame, the suspension, and the alignment.
Well, there could be external bolt-on pieces. Again, our intention wouldn't be to have engine overhauls being done at this location.
Okay. The other thing is, and I think Barb brought up, you don't plan, and it's written in here that the only vehicles that are allowed really are customer-owned trucks and trailers that are there for service. There won't be any leasing of storage, people to store their vehicle there or anything like that, correct?
That's not our intentions. correct.
Okay.
Could I ask, just in regards, is there concern with engine work, or is there something that doesn't?
Well, I
fall
think
there?
then you start getting into, well, that's not what you're asking for first and foremost. So,
Well, Yeah, again, this business is frame suspension and alignment, but if there's something that happens, again, it's bolt-on pieces.
but you're not rebuilding engines and that. I mean, you're just, that's
Again,
not your
That's
role.
not what our guys are trained for at this location, at Truck-A-Line.
Yep.
So, again, I'll say the more simple repairs, the external engine, could very well be done there, just to save driving it 15 miles down to the other location or something, but if it is engine overhauls, our guys are trained down there, they're, that the locations, the different locations are certified with the engine manufacturers, and
So what about all the fluids in that then? I mean, because you got diesel, you got transmission fluids and different fluids. How is all that handled?
they go into waste bins, and that is picked up by the different waste haulers and our suppliers that bring those things in, those fluids.
And
But it's all very contained.
normally, we have in here about complying with environmental and city and state codes. Did I miss that, or?
Chair, no. There are some things, air quality, water quality, noise, odors, and in this case, waste oils, things of that magnitude that are out of our jurisdiction, they will be required, and I'm sure every facility they operate in now, they have a county waste license. It depends on what you're talking about, what type of permit, but it's very common. Every gas station, every tire repair, any automobile repair, they all are licensed by the county. And they require the fluids maintained in a certain way, the tires kept in a certain way, and so forth. So this is out of our jurisdiction, but it will be permitted by Anoka County, and one of our standard provisions, you got to get every other permit in the world, not just our conditional use permit.
Another question, in the summer in that, you got 19 bays, and your hours of operation are from 6 a.m. to midnight. The doors are always going to be closed, correct?
Well,
Correct? No.
how do you want me to answer that? Our guys love to have the doors open many times. This is not an air-conditioned facility, so our request would be that there's times when the doors will definitely be open in the summertime.
And I get concerned about noise. And I know right now that area is not really developed. But as it starts getting developed, tools make a lot of noise. And if you're open till midnight and the doors are open on a nice summer night, that noise carries. I mean, I live quite a distance from the freeway, and there are certain times of the year when the conditions, I hear the truck traffic. So you have the night times, you got your doors open, you got your air guns or whatever you use now going, that noise is going to carry. And I see that as a problem because, and Dean, that's more of a nuisance than a noise ordinance or, and I think we brought this up back when you came in with the concept that we kind of made that a concern. So that is one of my concerns. And I don't know how you guys feel, but that is one of mine. I think my biggest thing is the white building. And I'd say the storage, because I still think your parking lot is huge. For 19 bays of working, and I said this before, I think it's storage, that area should be screened. But it's considered service, so it's parking. But you're asking us to go with a PUD so you can change the color, which goes against our ordinance. And I look at that area, and I look at Hornsby and 150th, and I look at your landscape plan, and it's not adequate to me. And to say you want to reduce it, I would say you need to increase it. Because if you want me to say I will change the ordinance and accept a white building, which we've already had discussions with another occupant down there that bought property about a white building, I'd have a hard time because, I kind of went out on an Anoka County site and I looked at a few of your sites. And I looked at what the site looks like with the tractor trailers, the tractor trailer, two separate things, and just the whole layout of it. And I don't think in my personal opinion, coming down Hornsby, I want to see that. And I think this is setting precedents coming down there. So if we want to start, to me, it looks like a big semi-parking lot. And it needs more screening. If you want us to change the color and allow it, I think we need something back. And to me, a PUD is a tool that it's kind of give and take. And you've exceeded our parking requirements, but that's to benefit you, not us. The landscape, you say you've exceeded, and I really, really, really say you need to step that up a lot. Because I believe Hornsby should be screened where we're not going to see it. And it should be screened in a way that maybe, you know, you're putting up between the freeway looking back into that area, you're putting walls up to screen that area, I'm assuming, or whatever. But you got walls blocking that off, and you got your nice-looking building in the front, and it looks nice, really nice. But the back of it is a big parking lot, and it's not going to look as nice. So I would like to see more screening, and that's where I'm at. And I think that was one of the items, you know, for us to discuss tonight. But I don't think the city's getting enough for what you're asking, in my opinion. I think we need to beef up the screening a lot. I would like to see, right now you got a lot of deciduous trees. They lose their leaves. You're going to see everything in there. There's very, very few pines, conifers, whatever you want to call it. And I don't want to just see a metal fence around there or something. I want it to look kind of attractive because I believe this is kind of setting a precedent as to what we accept coming down Hornsby. You know, I go for a walk over at Tamarack, which I go through Hugo, and I pull into Hugo, and Hugo looks really nice now, right, when you come off 14. And I turn to go to Tamarack, and it looks like an industrial park. That's what I see this, and I can't accept it.
At all? Anybody else have any?
Well, I'm still concerned about the number of parking spaces. If you say that you have turn out 20 to 30 a day with 2 shifts, I just don't know why you need that many parking spaces. And that's going to look pretty rough from either the freeway or Hornsby. And I just can't understand it. It doesn't add up to me. So that's a problem for me too. Because it's going to look like a big parking lot. And I don't know how you rectify that. But that the design standards and performance standards for that particular area of the city was, I mean, commercial, not really a parking lot of service. You know what I'm saying? If you read the design standards and the performance standards for that area. It's, oh, let's see if I can find it right away. Highway commercial, performance standards, provide retail, entertainment, medical facilities, assisted living, professional offices, service businesses that serve highway users and the entire regional community. And then outdoor storage of retail goods, vehicles, and equipment not exceeding 50% of the gross square foot of the combined building floor space. So you're just going to have a 40,000 square foot building and the rest of it's impervious parking. So that does concern me.
Is that it, Barb?
Yeah.
Bob, you have anything else to comment? Because we're going to go to open, we're not, we're having our discussion in 2 weeks on the 21st. Just so, we're just looking at comments or questions?
Just Bob, no further comment.
Okay.
Well, the only thing I have as far as what you just said is part of what was listed in our packet was possible public hearing discussion items. And I think part of this is to, one, give the applicant the ability to come back if there's certain items, like screening, that they might need to amend or want to amend. And I think Dean's looking for some direction too, so that our next meeting is, gives him a little more insight, kind of like we went through with park construction.
So in summary, I think I hear three things of concern: parking, storage, containment, height,
Color
Design.
and the color design. So
and screening.
those are three areas to review within the next 2 weeks to see what we can come up with.
Dean, you have any comments, or?
I'd just like to make a comment on the building. I hear what you're saying in regards to a big white building. We've went to lengths to try and get some of the big white building look out of it. I feel we need to stay with our branding. That's part of what we do. It doesn't matter if it's our trucks or our facilities. They're colored the same, they look the same, people recognize them. But in the case of this building, we've added the window panels to the overhead doors. We've added the big window panels on the front of the building, the two-story window panels at the entrance. Again, trying to break up the white, we've added the darker gray veneer stone on the corners. There's awnings over the windows. If we do need to keep with what's been proposed, I think I just saw 27 coniferous trees. A majority can be placed out on the Hornsby side. That's we can screen it. One concern of mine is, so we have the berms shown on the plan. We don't want to hide it back there either. I've been told by a couple of the other property owners over there that the theft in that area is terrible. And they'll steal things, they'll drive through the gates, they'll do this, they'll do that. So I don't necessarily want to hide it so that nobody can see what's going on back there. Screening, I'm fine with, but again, I don't want to make it a little haven for someone to go hang out and steal stuff or who knows what. So again, I think that I hope that we have made some effort. I hope you see that we have made effort in regards to trying to minimize the so-called white box, whether it's not just a square facility. There are some dimensions to it.
And Dean, I get that. I see that. The ordinance, though, does not allow white. And you're asking to come in under a PUD, and part of that is so that you can have your white, which is your corporate color. And I know a lot of companies want their corporate color, and there are some communities that allow companies a certain percentage of the building to be their corporate colors. I mean, not everywhere would you be allowed to build this building if those weren't the colors, even if it's your corporate color. I think the part I'm having a hard time with is we need something back, and you say the security part of it is an issue, and I understand that, but the look is an issue to me, and the look is a long-term thing, and I know they talk about maybe, who knows when, making Hornsby a county road. That means we're going to have more traffic coming down there, and the look is going to be what what I see with these places, and it's just not enough trade-off for me. It's just not. You know, maybe you need to put up the wall around the whole thing so you get your security and we get our screening. I don't know, but if you came in under a CUP, you would not be allowed because your color does not meet the ordinance.
And it's painted.
And it's painted, that's the other thing. That's not allowed either. Storage, parking, you know, it's kind of a gray area to me. I think if something's out there past a week, it's storage. If you were coming under that type of situation, you would only be allowed 50% of outside storage. So there's some leeway here on the city that they're looking at giving too. So you want your corporate color, and security is an issue, and I get that. But the city needs something back too, in my opinion. And to have that open parking lot is not enough. I would like to see you come back with maybe twice as much with conifers and some block walls in there and some things to really hide that. Because I think it should be screened. But Dean, you have my opinion. We can open the public hearing.
Well, before we start the public hearing, I'd like to throw mine out. I understand where you're coming with the color white. This building is not like Bear Homes. It's got a lot more.
That's not why I'm saying it, though. It does not meet the ordinance.
But under a PUD, you give and take, right?
What are we getting?
Well, let me finish.
Okay.
There's four sides to a building. You need your corporate colors, and you've got your corporate name facing the freeway. Maybe, you know, there's different colors of white, you know. It doesn't have to be
White's white.
bleach white. I mean, we allowed Loves in, and they're not brown down there. They're not,
They're
buildings
neutral.
are brown.
well, they got yellow.
They're not white.
They
Well,
got yellow.
But it's the borders.
Yes.
Yeah, and they got their corporate colors.
You know,
And I'm not,
no, and I'm just saying.
Mr. Chair, can you make sure you're speaking to the microphone?
Oh, okay, I guess, I gather the deal is we'll just wait till discussion comes on this
That's
part.
all we
but-
can do.
But even putting more veneer or a block or something could break it up and stuff like that. But I just wonder if you want your corporate looking out on the freeway. I mean, when you talk about your corporate colors or something white and red, maybe that could be adjusted or whatever. But Dean, you have something to say? Or-
I just want to ask, and I certainly don't want to turn this into a confrontational situation here, but I'd like to ask about the lighting on the front of the hotel then. Red and white lighting that's bright as can be. I don't mind it. I love it. It's business. It's stuff going on. But that stuff's lit up like crazy, as well as the sign out front. I'm trying to see the difference.
Oh, you lost me on the lighting. What do you mean? on
The way the hotel.
Hotel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Again, it doesn't bother me. I like it. But I'm trying to understand.
Any other questions, comments? Well, let's open it up to the public hearing and see what we get there. At this time, we're going to open up the floor for the public. Anyone who has an interest in this matter and wants to present testimony as evidence to the issue, please acknowledge themselves by stating their name, address, and we'll first start with anybody inside the building. Anybody inside council chamber here that would like to step forward and make a statement?
Well, I'm Orman Anafana. I own the lodge next
Or-
door.
Orman,
Can you
excuse
come
me.
up before you got to state your name and address, sir? Thank you. Have a chair and pull the mic up.
Yeah, Orman and Afarda,
Could you spell
Elman
your last?
Enterprises, yep. And I own the 2 lots back there, right next to them, north of them. Forest Lake trailer. I personally, I don't see nothing wrong with what they are trying to do over there. You come around the corner, if you're really too worried about looking at semi trucks, you look at 92 of them every day you go by there in the morning and at night. There's no fencing around that place. If it's bothering somebody, they should have said something about it a long time ago, because I don't, it's all fine. It's all, everything is with trucking around the corner and trailers, the whole thing is that way anyway. I don't see a problem with it. That's, you know, and like he said, you gotta be careful with, we are on the east side of that freeway, and then all the bad stuff that happens with the freeway and everything over there, so you gotta be really careful with all the theft going on and all the garbage getting dumped on Hornsby side and on our side, you know, dishwashers to wrappers and all that. It's just about there. The county comes and cleans it up once a week. So,
Are you talking about the trailers on your street, Feller there? Or are you talking about the trailers down at Love Trucking? or-
Loves, there's
Loves?
truck and, there's semis there all night long and all day long. We work there, we go by it every day. It's not a problem, that's what I'm trying to say. That's already there. It doesn't matter if they have 50 trucks or 90 trucks. It's not gonna, it doesn't bother me. I don't think it's gonna bother anybody else the way it's kind of growing down there. You are asking me our opinion, and I don't think there is anything wrong with, I mean, there's nobody gonna go put a hotel next to it over there or anything else. This is the kind of business that's what's growing down there.
Okay.
So,
Well, I thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
comment. Is
yep,
Yep.
thank you.
there anyone else out in the public inside the building here? If no one else is coming forward, we'll now ask anybody on the video conference via Zoom. Is there anybody out there that would like to make a comment? Oh, wait, we got somebody in here.
Can I ask one?
You can,
Spencer,
you can have a seat and name, your name and address.
Spencer, 10103, 257th Street, Chisago. Can I ask your noise comment? You were concerned about noise?
Correct.
These shops do a ton of noise testing, year in and year out. Safety concerns, all that, doors open, doors closed, for reverberation to distance to whatever. So I would like to better understand, you can hear the freeway, that's where you chose to live, but how are you describing noise versus what I would say the safety standards that we have to abide by with doors closed and open work?
You know, we had a man in here that had to come from a home business, and he was in here, and I get it, it was residential, but he was riveting on trucks, and the noise carried a lot, and you know, part of what he had to do was do it inside. It can be annoying. You know, you got noise data that can show us how far it travels from the work you're doing, fine, bring it in, okay? I mean, it's something to consider, but I just think it can be a problem.
I'm just asking from safety standards to whatever
But
else, when it becomes,
Fine.
how you described it versus what we have to abide by, and then beyond, it becomes, that's just my question is,
I'd like to interrupt. We're not going to get
No,
into conversation.
and that's where I'm saying.
Yeah, I
is
see.
we
It's a
abide
good
by-
point.
We abide by.
OSHA.
We abide by every safety standard and then some, and it's tested every year by a third party, closed and whatever. So I want to make that a point. when it comes to noise, because we are very conscious of it, so,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to let everybody know in a public hearing, it's to make your testimony, not to carry on a conversation. But anyway, we're going to go back to the video. Anybody else in the audience here? Hearing nobody coming forward. Anybody out there on video conference via Zoom that would like to make a statement? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. And this is for the plat and the CUP and the PUD. We'll close the public hearing at this time with the understanding that this hearing will be continued with the Planning Commission's discussion of this application on December 21st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. or thereafter. And appreciate everybody coming forward. And we're going to move on to the item number, whatever we get. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blaine Brothers and everybody for coming, and we'll have a good discussion next time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Oh,
I think it would be appropriate if there's any comment regarding
all the statements that were,
the comment that was made. It was out of order per se, but I think now would be the time to do it. I also have 4 or 5 discussion items, which you alluded to earlier. I think this is the time to get anything that you want. As Commissioner King said, you want an exception from us, I want something in return. This is the time to do it. So I have the ability to change direction or recommendations that might come to you rather than trying to work them out next week. So my preference would be you go down this list, and I think there perhaps aren't any issues that were raised during the testimony that warrant any debate. We haven't talked about specific site plan issues. I didn't hear any. You may not have them. The parking has come up for discussion. I think I understand it. You're trying to get a handle on, are there 92 spaces when you've got 19 service bays? Is there some other use of the parking lot being proposed here that we're not aware of? It would be my intention to take the discussions that were made here. No, we are not using the parking lot for any parking of vehicles that are not associated with the repair at this shop. It's those kinds of things, if you have concerns about, I'd like to continue that now and get them on the table. I'll make one clarification about landscaping, my 4th item on the list, and that is my comment is they exceeded the ordinance. They are spot on with the requirements for overstory trees. So based upon the size of the property, there are 72 overstory trees required. If you simply count them on the list, and I think I put that in my notes, they meet that requirement. What is in excess? We no longer require foundation plantings. So the foundation plantings, which have nothing to do with screening, are what's in excess. So if you debate that issue, I just want to make clear they're not in excess of our requirements for the trees that are typically associated with screening. So that's something you may wish to talk about. And the last comment is what I think a couple of you have hit on, and that is in any planned unit development application, the basic premise for approving a planned unit development is an exchange. It is acknowledging something extraordinary for a request to make concessions. And the only thing I've heard is I don't see it. You're wanting us to vary our standards, but you even asked, gee, if we're in excess of landscaping, can we reduce it? When I'm hearing you saying, you might consider doubling it if that addresses some of your screening issues. So to me, you're either going to agonize over this in 2 weeks, or we talk about it right now and air this out, and it will help me with making final recommendations, and it'll give the applicant a clear understanding of what's happening, not at the last minute when you vote on it. Are you okay with?
I'm okay with that, Dean, but I'm having an issue with discussion. If we're having a period of discussion in 2 weeks, isn't that the time we air it out, or we?
If I may, the purpose of the 2 weeks was merely that you weren't forced to make decisions without any discussion on the first night. And I'm trying to make it so that we just don't take a holiday here, have some eggnog, and then come back, and we're debating, and nobody knows where you're going until 2 weeks.
It's giving time for him to make some recommendations.
It not only helps me and the applicant understand where you may be coming from in 2 weeks, but I think it gives you the best opportunity not to do this at the last minute. It's to put it on the table. And if you feel that you've put everything on the table, I'm fine with that. But I want to make clear that our purpose of having 2 meetings was to air everything out the first night and be prepared to make a recommendation the second night.
Okay, so do we reopen this public hearing then?
It's not a public hearing. This is a discussion
Discussion.
item amongst yourselves. And if you have another question of the applicant, if
We can ask.
if Chris wanted to say, okay, let's go back to the comment that we have to meet our own standards regarding noise, that may have nothing to do, or it may have everything to do with the concern that was originally raised. That's what I'd like to hear you, just continue these things. And if you want to honestly consider doubling landscaping as just a comment, I suspect you're going to be rather selective about it. You may not care about anything as much along 150th Street, which is going to abut another future business, as much as you might want to discuss something along Hornsby. I'm hearing that, but I don't make these recommendations, I just write them down. So I'm trying to guide you a little bit in the direction you may ultimately wish to take. I'd also say if you wanted to totally double and put it all on Hornsby, the landscape architects are going to tell you that it isn't quite going to fit.
Right.
So we got to be careful about that. I heard maybe there's a combination of fencing or walls in addition to landscaping. That's the nature of where you give the applicant a heads up where your recommendation may be coming from, and it'll help me put it in writing so you don't agonize this in 2 weeks. Is that fair?
Well, it's fair. Okay, I'll go along with that. I mean, I don't know, what's the other commissioners? You understand where we're going then? Or, and I think Chris has come out and kind of point blank said her opinions were on it, and I agree with screening is a big issue, more so than the color, and that's just, the color isn't, I know it's against the ordinance, but you're right, there's got to be give and take sometimes and stuff, but I think that the screening to Hornsby would be a number one. And then I don't really care about the freeway. The freeway is going to look at a nice building. And what screening's out there, I don't think is other than parking. And there won't be any semis parked out in the front, that many, if I'm correct.
None.
They're all.
No, it's all car spaces, and then I believe there's box truck spaces. That must be for deliveries or something.
They would only be out there for waiting to get
Okay.
Right, you got the doors out there so they can make a loop around more so, isn't it? That's the way I understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So and that's where why don't you have a seat up here again, by the mic?
Mike, our branch manager of the facility, just mentioned also in regards to the car parking spaces up front. In the plan, if you do look, there is a training room upstairs.
Yep.
That we use. Again, more need for parking. We have our suppliers that come in and do training for our techs. This will be what we feel today. Beeline is the company that does equipment that'll be placed in this building. They'll be there training our guys at different periods of time, or new guys that come. So at our other locations, we have vendor nights where different manufacturers come in and they train our customers, they train our guys. So we use the parking.
So you have specific reasons why you have so much car parking up
Absolutely.
front? I mean, because when you look at 50 employees and 125 parking spots, you start to think, what else is going on here? So, you know, with what you're saying, that makes sense why you would have additional car parking.
Well, and you have 2 shifts, so the 50 aren't going to be there all at
Correct.
the same time. You're going to have maybe 30
Yeah.
employees at one time. That's my concern. It just seems like a lot of parking and a lot of pavement with water running off of the pavement. I mean, I don't understand why so much of it has to be paved, and then you got to deal with the stormwater and the environment and everything.
I have a question, maybe Kurt could come back up front. Kurt? Kurt, could you step up here? I want to talk about the building a minute. You got, I'm just looking at it, and I haven't read through that deal, but is that the rock that looks in the front there, those, to offset by the windows, is that put on the span creek or whatever the tip-ups?
It is not part of the structural tip-up panel. It is a veneer that's put on for architectural reasons.
Okay. So this is just, these tip-ups are all just flat concrete, kind of?
No, they're ribbed. There's
They're
a
ribbed?
yes, ribbed finish. And then at the top of the building, there's roughly a 1 foot 6 or 7 inch piece that is smooth.
Okay, so we're talking about this building here, and I know we're talking about the big white buildings and stuff like that, and if we can offset, how much of the front has to be white to you, Dean or Kurt? I mean, is to make your corporate colors come out. I mean, if one of those tip-ups was exposed agate or something like that, I don't know what the cost would be or whatever, would that offset it more? Knock down the white? I'm not trying to get rid of your white, trying to tone it down a little.
Well, that's what we were trying to do with the corners, with the darker corners.
Okay.
To place a panel that's, say, rock face or whatever the, darn it, I'm sorry, what did you call it? Exposed. I don't know that we could place that in there and make it look.
Well, it's a
I think
nice
it would
looking
look worse.
building, and I just wonder if there's another way to, like above the garage doors, on the 4 doors facing the freeway, is there a possible way to put something above that to break up that white above the doors? Because the doors are white too. Can the doors be a different color or offset it? I don't know. Just throwing ideas out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, again, I go back. It's not that it's a bad-looking building. It's not. It's just that white is not a color that is part of the ordinance. And even as the city council and that is looking at, re-looking at the design standards, white has not come back into their color schemes for that area. They do have the discretion with a PUD to grant an exception. But I go back that if we're going to do a PUD, the city's got to get something out of it. And I'm with the screening. I mean, and if the city is going to look at white being an acceptable color, then I think they should change the ordinance to include white as part of the color scheme down there. I mean,
Didn't we once have a talk about that, like the color brown?
We had hours of talk.
that's why I'm making a deal out of this.
Well, I know,
Well,
white,
and the whole purpose is to give some unity to our city. I mean, I understand these businesses have their colors and everything, but I don't think that and I have to be careful I say this, I mean, it doesn't fit with what's up there. I mean, it's white, and we had a fellow that, in the same area, that just came in and put his tip-ups, white tip-ups, and we made him change it.
I know when I went down, I was just down that road yesterday, out on the freeway. And if you go by Bear Homes, then you go by this lot, then you go down by Forest Lake Towing, and you can look at that boat place where they're parking boats out front and
Yeah,
all
but
that.
they've been there for decades.
I understand that, but they're all gray, white, whatever, that whole line. And I understand what the ordinance,
No, and I'm not going with the ordinance. I'm going with the 2 years of discussion that was had on all these areas. And part of that discussion with what came out of this was changing the look in those areas. Now, we can't do anything about what's there unless one of those companies come in to alter to build, to add on or something, right? Elizabeth, if they come in, do they have to?
we're all looking around at each
Well,
other.
anyways,
in
the
the-
point of the discussion.
Within the past, we've allowed them to continue their colors.
Okay. But the 2 years of discussion, when we were redoing this, I mean, and we literally beat it to death, was to change the look. That's what the council wanted, was to change the look. So you look at what's in there. I come up the freeway, I look at Coates, I look at Gander, and I see trailers, 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 trailers. Not the look I like, and nobody else does. And
It's not-
that's why.
Yeah, it's not Gander anymore either. It's
Well, I know,
RV
RV
Inc.
World, or
something.
now
Yeah.
they sell boats too, and everything, so, but the point of this was to change it. So, like I said, even going through the design standard changes that are on the table right now to change what we did, talking about it for 2 years, they still have not included white. Why? I mean, and now the first permit that comes in, or application that comes in, it's a white building. And I got nothing against white. I really don't. No. I sound like it, but I don't.
No, but
If I could
thought-
just mention, I'd like to just say, this building, it appears white, but I believe that there's gray in the color. So you guys had mentioned earlier, there's actually gray wording in the color.
But your
It's
plan
white,
calls out white.
And they look white, and they do.
Yeah. I mean,
A technicality, there's gray in it. To not paint it.
white's not
in my
really a
opinion-
color either.
Right, right. To not paint it, just in my opinion, that adds cost to us. Heck, if I could get away with not painting it, it would, the building would still function as is. This is honest to God, this is, and it's not like we built a ton of buildings, but this is the first time this has come up at any city. And we're on the interstates and we're whatever, so.
And I'm just going by what
respect
our
your opinion,
ordinances say. And that's the other thing, painted is another thing that the city did not want. So,
Well, and look at the bridge. They painted the pillars on the bridge,
Yeah,
and
and
within
it-
a year, they peeled, and experts did it. That's the reason we don't want painted, is because you have issues with peeling and bubbling and,
maintenance, yeah.
maintenance.
So it's not that white is really a problem, it's just not part of our ordinance. And it's not part of what was spent redoing the ordinance after the comp plan changed and what the look they were looking for. So that's why I'm going. And I'm going back to, they're under a PUD, and that gives the council the ability to accept white. I'm just saying, I don't think we're getting enough bang for our buck.
Okay, all right, so,
And it's also the fact that, like you said, it sets precedence. What do we tell the next person? That, well, our ordinance says it has to be earth tones and everything, but he got a white building.
well, Kurt, you had a question here.
I'd just like to make one comment on the landscaping piece of it. We've seen if there's too much trees plantings that in a very small period of time, they're overgrowing each other. And in all of their facilities, we do irrigation, so there's grass. If it's solid trees, you end up with so much shade that none of the grass will grow. I think there needs to be a mixture, but to double the trees, I think would just be choking each other out.
Well, and I also brought up maybe, and I think Dean did too, is maybe you need to work with your landscape people and see what else you can do. And maybe it is a wall. And I remember listening to the workshop, I think it was, when you were in front of the council, and one of the council members talked about seeing walls where they have vines and it looks really nice and everything else. I agree, you cannot put too many trees together because you end up with really it not looking very well. But I'm also not a landscape designer, where I think there's a way to achieve maybe more of what would be a better trade-off by working with them once they realize what we're looking for. Like I said, there's walls, there's fencing, and there's an incorporation of using both. But I would like to see more screening, and you guys,
Okay.
I've said my piece.
Yeah, no, and that's clear. I think what we can do, though, is we can take it one step further and give a recommendation back to what would be suitable. And I thought Ron had a good idea, where you have the face of the building in your corporate colors facing 35, but maybe tone it down on the back side facing Hornsby, where it's not so drastically white throughout the whole area.
Well, if you look at the pictures, it's just white.
It's just white. So
Yeah.
maybe that's a compromise where we say, okay, we'll allow you your corporate colors on the west side of your building, which is your corporate identity, but then the other adjoining three sides, north, south, and east, would be of a more neutral color to tone down the brightness and the fact that you're not meeting the actual ordinance. And so then on landscaping, you know, I'm looking at your page L202 on the sheet, and there's 21 points on landscaping under general notes, and then there's 17 points on landscaping under planting notes. But on none of those do they say how tall any of these trees are. In other words, are you going to put in 6-inch conifers expecting it to grow to 30 feet in 30 years? Or are you going to start out with 8-foot tall trees? In other words,
They do show on the backside L1.01, they show the heights of the trees.
can you help me with that? Does it say the average height of the trees?
Well, depending on which, you know,
It's the dimension of the trunk.
like the
Yeah.
silver fir is 6 foot high, the white spruce
6
is
foot.
6 foot, the Colorado is 6 foot.
Yep.
The hackberry and that go back to, I think is it supposed to be gallon, or is that a G or a C?
Yeah.
Caliper.
And
That's
that's
basically the
the
diameter.
diameter of the tree, right? Yeah,
the
and we
planting-
went through this.
Yep. The planting heights that are shown on L101
Yep.
are consistent with ordinance requirements.
Yeah.
So you're going to get a 6-foot tree day one, not in 10 years.
That's what I'm asking.
And
Yep.
Okay.
the different deciduous trees are going to be different heights, but they will all be a more mature tree with that diameter or
Yep.
caliper dimension at 2.5 inches, which is kind of a typical nursery stock.
It's kind of like we put in the
Standard.
park.
Yeah, those look nice.
Yeah, those about the same size.
Well, that makes a difference to me. You know, now that I understand the height and the caliper and the diameter of the tree, that tells me that it's not going to be a little shrub at the beginning, and it might grow 6 feet over 30 years. I mean, that makes a difference to me on the landscaping part of it. But I'm concerned then about the screening for the containment of the waste parts.
I'd like to make a comment. For 32 years, I drove around in a squad car, and I always tried to figure out who the hell designed these things. Because you build up too much cover, and I agree with Dean and everybody, and you allow theft. You allow people to hide, and a squad car goes through these places quick. They just come cruising in and take a quick look, and out the door they go. And at nighttime, when there's a lot of cover and stuff like that, I used to say to myself, it's not secure. I think it's almost, I know we want to screen the trailers and stuff like that, but you get it too compact in there and you're going to have a problem. And that problem, and I know where you're coming from over there on Hornsby, because you got Washington County sitting a few feet away, and deputies in a whatever 200 square mile county aren't going to, if there's 4 of them on, they're not going to be in your parking lot. They're going to be over probably on the west side, looking over there. So, I mean, we got to be cautious about how packed in we get these places, because
You know, it's twofold. I mean, you got to decide what you want to look at coming down the road, and you guys decide that, because you'll have to live with it.
Yeah.
You know, so, and the security part, maybe they need to put up a security fence. I mean, that's, that's an option too, is if they're concerned about security, maybe it's got to get fenced.
And
But-
not only that, they're open 18 hours.
Well, remember the people we had down the road, they had a fence and they stole trailers.
Well, you know, they got trailers that people can hide behind too. You know, people want to,
Through the fences.
well,
That's happened around the whole
Then-
Oxford edition. Steal a truck from us, they'll go down,
okay.
Where the whole property is, where the interstate trailer places, they go right through their fence and steal a trailer and, snowmobiles and everything. This, RSC, the trailer place there, they are in there. Tracker Marine, which for State Motorsports, those fences get cut all the time. It's kinda, it's in it, like he said, we are on the east side, and county lines is here. There is really not that much, police traffic there, and they do hide, and they do, it has been, everybody, we have to go through, block our fences every night. Everybody else, we put vehicles, us, RSC, all the other guys, they drive through them. I mean,
Wow.
it's not like they cut the bolt, they drive through them.
Yeah, we don't want to scare these guys out of here.
And not only that, that is a company's issue. The city can't handle that. There's no way that the city can be responsible for the security of each of these buildings. That's a business.
Well, I
Obligation.
wouldn't go that far, because the city is required by law to.
Well, I understand that, but we don't have a police force. They know that.
Well,
We have the sheriff.
right, but a city is required by law to give protection. I mean, that's in state statute.
Well,
Well, it's protection to its citizens,
No,
and that it's
well-
not to secure every business and
No, it
every
isn't.
house and everything else.
I'm not saying that, but no, be
there's-
safe and secure in your place. If you read the
Well,
statute.
okay, well, we,
Can I make a suggestion that we circle back in
yes,
here and
thank you.
try to provide some guidance to
Right.
these folks? We're concerned about colors, we're concerned about parking, we're concerned about the containment, storage. Those are the things that we've talked about. So we proposed maybe that you could tone down the color on the adjoining east and north and south sides. Is that something that you would consider? It's our way of trying to compromise with you, if you haven't figured that out.
Right, I appreciate that.
We like you here.
Yep.
We appreciate you being here. We're trying to work with you, so is that something that you would consider?
In regards to the color, I would just as soon not. If we left the ends of the building, to me, or changed the color of the ends of the building, it would look unfinished. It would look like we piecemealed something together.
Okay.
Is my opinion of doing that. Kurt was just mentioned, and it was brought up earlier, the berm on 150th that's listed. It's shown on the 150th, though, more than on Hornsby.
on Hornsby.
We've done this sort of thing at our Blaine facility mainly, I guess. But we bermed up and with pine trees on top of it, so it does screen it. You can still see in, but it does screen the area. It does hide.
I think that's a nice solution, depending on the height of the trees, once again.
And I think bringing back a different landscape plan, showing how you would screen that back there would be helpful.
Yeah.
To build a berm along Hornsby, we would probably have to lose some of the pavement so that we could make it a manageable berm and then place trees on the berm itself that would do the screening.
And maybe not double, the amount of landscaping, but maybe add a certain percentage in addition to what they currently have? Would that appease your sense of trying to add more to accommodate for the lack of giving up the color? I'm trying to just find a middle ground here, is all I'm trying to do. So if you said 30% in addition to your current plan, the way it sits today, would that?
Well, he's talking about berming and adding more
Berming
pine
and adding
trees, and
more
I think
trees.
let's bring back a plan. I mean, I think that's,
Okay.
I guess if we had some direction, if that would be something so that we would design a plan, but if it's not at all.
Dean, is that something you can work with them with?
Sure.
So if it,
I mean, you understand what we're looking for.
I can tell you this, if screening is the issue rather than an ornamental approach, you're going to lose a lot of parking in order to put a berm that will have any screening
Right.
potential. I mean, you're talking 40 feet needed to put a berm that would be 3-4 feet tall. So there's room in here with clusters of pine trees. Our ordinance requires, we like to see on roadways, deciduous trees. This is a PUD. You can do anything. What I've heard so far is you want more pine trees on Hornsby. That's going to provide the screening. Everything else, all deciduous trees, particularly in the winter, provide no screening.
Right.
But even in the summer. They're intended to provide a crown and shade, and ultimately you don't increase the spacing of shade trees closer than 50 feet apart. You don't have that standard for certain pine trees. They can be in clusters, particularly certain arborvitae that don't grow so wide that you can't create screens out of them. And they're planted at 6-8 feet heights. And you can put clusters of 3 to 5 of these and then put a shade tree in. And it's not a continuous barrier, but it might give you what you're looking at.
is there overhead wiring out there? On the street, or is it all underground?
All underground, isn't it?
It should be underground there.
Yeah, it is.
It's underground.
None of us want to be in the position of designing this.
I don't.
Yeah, and I know you
That's
weren't
why
suggesting it, but I think if
Yeah.
leaving this evening, they understand what it is you want. You need to see something. Barb may have said it the best. We make a precedence. We need to have an excuse. We want something in our back pocket that indicates why we did this. In this case, you're really talking about making a color exchange. What's extraordinary that you get in return? It is a better effort on Hornsby. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know that we can go further on that topic. Are you convinced, with all of the questions that you raised on equipment, the number of vehicles, trailers or tractors that may potentially be here, the potential for that? Are you content with what you understand the nature of the business? Because many of the things I wrote down, and I will rely on Ella being more thorough in note keeping, but part of the conditions are going to be based upon the statements that were made by the applicant in response to your questions. We're not going to have contracts with independent or other contractors that need a place to keep their vehicle. This business is for repair only, which is why it doesn't meet your requirements for storage limitations. This is associated with a repair business. And if you're content that they're only having vehicles out here that are in repair, and you did hear that, yes, it may take a month or more to get a decision on an insurance with an accident. Do you want to put a percentage limit on how many wrecked vehicles are in the parking lot? These are the things that you might want to focus on, because I think what you understand and hope is that this person is in business to fix vehicles. And for everybody's purpose, their own and their customers, as soon as you can get in and out is what makes the world go round. But if you're storing vehicles for months that are waiting for decisions by, this isn't an impound lot.
Right.
And we're gonna make that certain in the recommendations. So
Can you put in any limitations?
I'm gonna suggest a variety of conditions that will put the onus on them to have to come back and amend the CUP if in fact, gee, Barb was right, there's no parking left anywhere in these other cities and we'd like to lease 40 spots indefinitely. You'll have an opportunity to do it. There's going to be no vehicles that are parked out here for display. So they run out of room in Inver Grove Heights with their trailers, they're not going to bring them here. That'll be a condition. And if they want to change that, because the business dynamics change, they're going to amend the PUD and you'll have an opportunity to agree with that.
I think that's a good idea.
So that's the value for me. They know where you're coming from. If they're going to answer you in a public hearing and tell you this is what it is, that needs to be a condition, and that's my intention. So you got an answer also on the number of automobile parking spaces, well in excess of our requirements. My calculations for the office portion of the building, which is really the only thing that warrants this, and a small number for the shop area. You know, you could say 20 and double that because they got 2 shifts. That's 40 employee stalls. But if they're doing training sessions for the other businesses in the metropolitan area, vendor shows, things of that magnitude, that's the purpose of the office space. I don't think you have an objection because those vehicles aren't sitting there.
Right.
But it answered, why do you have 125 instead of 75 parking spaces? If you're content with that, that's not necessarily going to be a condition, but to me, that's the value of this exchange, getting an understanding of really what Blaine Brothers and Truck-A-Line use of this property will be. So I'm going to sit down with the applicant between now and 2 weeks and talk about how to resolve the extraordinary design considerations they're going to make in response to their request to not meet your requirements on earth tone colors. And you'll be the judge in 2 weeks whether they met it or not, and that'll be part of the recommendation.
Do you need anything further from us?
You were talking about a percentage of vehicles that sit there because of insurance and that. Are you adding something like that, or do you have a recommendation on what? Because we don't want vehicles sitting there for months and months and months. And I know that's not your intent. I know that, you know.
No,
but
I want to make it clear that this isn't an impound lot.
Right.
Like auto auction facility that was proposed on Lake Drive. I mean, that's all they did. And those vehicles, they wanted to get them in and out, but you know how big of the storage area that was, and it was just all vehicles. These are vehicles coming in for the primary purpose of getting fixed. We will have, I want to clarify that there will be incidental or accessory engine repair. And we can talk about, I think you said alternators, whatever I wrote down. but this is not an engine overhaul business. If they want to come and change it into that in 10 years, that, in my estimation, would be an amendment to your conditional use permit. So that's what helps me, the clarification that you have made. And when you say, do I have enough, unless you have other questions, I think I have the direction I need, and I think they've heard the concerns that you've got.
Sounds good.
Can you also add with the parking, the vehicle parking, how many times they expect to have these seminars or whatever they're having, so that we have some idea?
Barb, can you speak into the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. Why there would be 125 parking spaces? If they're having seminars, how often is that?
Can I speak on that? Expansion on our training.
Would you actually be able to come up into the microphone? Thank you.
Spencer, 1010. North American Trailer, we have, we are in our 5th year right now with our tri-district. So we work with the Chamber of Commerce. So we have a high school program, juniors and seniors that come in. 2 teachers, so there's 20, I'll say 26 on average students for the last 5 years that come through our shops. Every day we provide our facility, our training room, 3 hours a day with those teachers to get, I'll say the trades, kids that don't want to go to college. We were working
Like
with.
an open house?
No, you're
No,
doing like an apprenticeship type thing where they're learning the trade instead of going to school, which is a wonderful thing.
Yes, ma'am. So we work directly with, so it came through the chamber, we work directly with this particular group. They have their own deal that we've been trying to expand. So we've been talking to Anoka County, Chisago County. We've been working with Pine County, trying to get their teachers and kids engaged in trades. And again, when you look at the parking spaces right now, when an additional, I'll say 30 vehicles come into our yard, we're working on those kind of programs too. That is, again, now the 5th year we've done that at North American Trailer, and we've been trying to expand that throughout our facilities to try and get kids into our trade. Just wanted to put that there.
Wonderful, wonderful program.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
One question I do have, and I know you kind of mentioned that you need the size parking lot you have for the tractor trailers and that because of growth in the future. Do you ever plan on adding on to this building? I mean, because you're only able to really do so much work with the facility you have, correct? I mean, what do you just think you're going to pile them all in and then?
Well, the way it is right now, there would still be 6 hours a day that it would be closed. So that would be our first deal, is we'd be asking that we're open 24 hours a day. And there are a couple of our facilities that are open 24 hours a day. That's where we would go first. There's I'll call it maybe saturation point that you might find that we see at our other facilities. There's only so many pieces of equipment in say this location that you're going to draw from. It's why we didn't build this right next door to our Blaine shop. It separates it enough, but it's still close enough for access as our parts supply and so many other things. They work well together. I don't know that we would add on to this. I'm going to say right now, most likely not. But in buying all this property, the additional property, there has been discussion, our people say, maybe in the future, our own companies could use that available land for a different deal. So, long answer, I don't know. I wouldn't expect it, but.
Thank you.
I got one quick question. I know you say it's 6 in the morning till midnight. That's Monday through Friday or all through the weekends? I don't know if that was asked or.
Thanks for asking. That is Monday through Friday.
Okay, thank you. Dean, you have what you need, you think?
Do you have any more questions? I mean, that's the key. It's not for me is.
We need help.
Well, I think, yeah.
I think we all just like to avoid, unknown things. And
Yeah.
here last week, I presented to them that we're going to need you to change your site plan. We need a cul-de-sac on part of your property and so forth. I will say now, because I suspect this is going to happen, both the cul-de-sac extension and looping that water main, which was recommended by the engineer, it isn't going to impact anything because they do have substantially more automobile parking than our ordinance requires. So that won't be a PUD consideration. That just becomes an agreement on their behalf to work with the city to accomplish this. And again, it's no problem to us. It is, more to them because they're still consistent with the ordinance. Barb, you had asked, can we put a restriction on the number of these activities? I think we want to explain that the authorization is there, but those become a daytime activity that really are supported only by the amount of parking that would be there. And if they wish to say, we're on average, we're going to have monthly training, vendor shows, whatever, in our training room, that's probably as far as we would go. I don't.
Yeah, I don't agree with limiting.
Yeah, I have a hard time
someone's
doing that.
business.
We rarely do. But I think the question about, hours of operation and then you've got so much parking, can you expand the building? I think he understands they'd be coming back, again, another conditional use permit amendment to go to perhaps a third shift first. And one of our first questions at a staff level, what are you going to do with lot 2? I'm sure they'd love to be in a position to say, we can put another one of our businesses here, and we'd probably love that as well. But they don't know the answers to many of these things either. They have a luxury here to oversize things so they don't get into the jams that they've experienced in other properties. And I think we're all aware of those activities happening in our own community. People run out of space. But the idea of meeting or exceeding design in one part of this development to compensate for an ordinance requirement in another is huge in my mind, which I think you've debated and given direction, and I will sit down with them in the next week, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with some additional recommendations and findings.
Sounds good.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you again and again.
Yeah. We do look forward to your business.
I'm starting to wonder.
Right.
We never even got to this big pamphlet of lights. Well, is everybody comfortable with going on to item number 8, the public hearing and discussion on a 2023 fee schedule, pages 33 through 50?
Yes, we're
Guess we
comfortable.
got, Ella, would you like to read the notice as published in the Forest Lake Times?
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the City of Columbus Planning Commission on December 7th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as parties may be heard. The hearing will be conducted in person and by interactive technology at the Columbus City Hall located at 16319 Kettle River Boulevard, Columbus, Minnesota, to consider a city code amendment updating the fees in the following areas: building department, tobacco license, park fees, variance application, parkland dedication, and public utilities. A full copy of the proposed ordinance is available for review during regular business hours in the city administrator's office at the address listed above or viewed on the city website. Members of the public interested in attending in person, monitoring the meetings, or who want more information should contact city offices at 651-464-3120 or visit the city website at columbusmn.us. The hearing shall continue until all evidence and testimony has been received. Signed, Elizabeth Mersco, Zoning Administrator. Submitted to Forest Lake Times on November 17th, 2022. Published and posted in the Forest Lake Times on November 24th, 2022.
Thank you, Ella. I gather, Frank, you're going to handle this?
That is correct. So good evening, everyone. Tonight we are going to talk about our fee schedule. However, just to be clear, this is just for the planning and zoning parts of the fee schedule. So just because we're planning and zoning or planning commission, this is strictly a to do a public hearing for that, make a recommendation. So if I could go ahead and get started. I'll kind of walk everyone through my memo. So if we, I basically, to start, took a look at our fees and escrow for both regular variances as well as administrative variances. And I did a few different things to kind of try and gauge where we should be going as a city. And to start, what I did is I took a look at different fees and escrows from cities throughout the metro. And that is, and I'm sorry, just to be clear, the planning and zoning fees that we're looking at, that's going to be on page 41 of your packet. And my memo was kind of basically about the why and how I got there. As I was saying, I compared fees and escrows. I used cities, Anoka County, other ones nearby and adjacent, and kind of the ones that are on the edge of the Twin Cities metro, so I kind of feel are pretty similar to Columbus. Elizabeth, right now, she has page 44 up. That's table 1. This is where I did averages, and I also looked at averages with the highest and lowest value removed, because if you look at the table, there's, particularly with the escrows, some extremes at the low and the high. And I just kind of wanted to see what things would look like when you took out those extreme when you took out the lowest and highest values. I also looked at the fee and escrow combined, just to see how that would look, because I think that's ultimately what we're kind of getting compared to with other cities, is how much gets put down in one way. And so sorry. So I think the one that really kind of jumped out at me is and the reason why I wanted to point out the variances combined. If you look, because I did do the averages with the highest and lowest values removed, when you look at the variances combined, that's only a $10 difference as opposed to just the variance fee average at the bottom of the screen here. You see that there's about $50, $100 differences in these, but when you look at the two combined, it's about $10. So I think those two numbers, the average is about $750. The average with the highest and lowest value removed, that's $740 for both the fee and the escrow. So those are kind of the big two numbers for me that jumped out. And I also, besides just taking a look at other cities, I did a review of city staff and consultants' time. I broke down my time down in table 2, which is on page 45. And I was able to do that just to kind of give everyone an example of what I'm doing, how I got to that total. And then, and since I'm the one that's doing the most work on it, I think it was important to kind of see how I got to 7.5 hours. And also on page 45 is all labor cost from not only the entire staff, but our consulting fees as well. And what I ended up coming up with our billable rate for city staff, we end up at about $436.02 on average. And then our consulting fees end up being about $320 to review the regular variances. And in addition to staff time, I also took into consideration different non-labor fees, so legal notices, postage, recording fees, and just kind of on average, we send out about 10 to 15 letters, and the legal notices range in cost from about $30 to $35. And putting all that together with the recording fee, I ended up coming up with a $86 per variance average. So when we look at all this together, so the staff time, the supplies, and the recording, that amounts to $522. The consultant fees on average are $320 per variance. And I'm splitting those two out just because the escrow will go towards the consulting fees, and the the staff time, the recording fees, all that's going to come out of our variance fee. So what my suggestion is adjusting the variance fee from $150 to $300. And I'm also going to suggest not adjusting the $500 escrow that we currently charge. The new variance fee would help cover our costs better. It's, I don't think, that much of a leap considered how much we are still spending. We're not going to be covering all costs, but it would help us get there a little bit more. This would result with the $300 variance fee as well as the $500 escrow. Combined, an applicant would be putting down $700 per variance as a combined fee and escrow, which, if you remember earlier, is still going to be lower than the average of the cities that I studied. And leaving the escrow as is for, even though it's $300 consulting fee, or $320 consulting fee, that's going to still give us a little bit of breathing room in case there's things with a variance where it gets prolonged for whatever reason. Because with the escrow, if it's only $320, they're still going to get the remaining money out of that $500 back, so they're not going to be spending the full $320 if it sticks to about the average time we use our city attorney. So that is what I have for just the regular variance. Now I'm gonna go a little bit into the administrative variance. These don't take as much time. They aren't as common in the Twin Cities, so I only was able to compare to a couple other cities. That includes White Bear Lake and Maplewood. Just to be clear, both of these cities are developed. We use our administrative fees for administrative variances for septic variances. So if septic systems don't meet our code,
Septic locations,
septic locations.
septic locations.
Thank you for clarifying. That's what we use ours for. White Bear Lake and Maplewood, they're both developed, so that they're not using it for that purpose. Maplewood uses it for just garage setback variances. White Bear Lake uses it for different like non-conforming setbacks, ground-mounted solar energy systems. So it's a little bit different there, and you'll notice that Maplewood is $500, White Bear Lake is $25, so big gap there. And like I said, there's less staff time taken, as you can see on table 4 of that's on page 46. The staff time between me, planning and zoning tech, our permit coordinator, and our city administrator, that about 3.5 hours, that ends up being about $141 dollars in a billable rate. And there's also a $46 recording fee per variance. And then in addition to that, we also have a $100 or $105. Typically, we'll have to use that for our septic inspector through MIT. And so what the staff suggests is adjusting the administrative variance fee to $200, which will help cover the, on average, $141 in staff time and $46 recording fee. This is going to be lower than Maplewood's $500 fee. And then the staff would also suggest adding a $250 escrow per variance to cover consultant costs. Again, this will give us a little bit of cushion in case something weird happens. Since my time working here, I think all of them have taken probably about an hour, but there was one that took quite a bit more. So, and again, I'll remind that we're not going to just take this $250 and then if we only use 105 pocket, they'll get a refund if we don't use the entire $250 escrow. So those are my suggestions as to what the Planning Commission should recommend to the City Council. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have and any comments. And yeah, Bob?
Frank, this is Bob. I have a question.
Sure.
It doesn't really distinguish between a residential variance and a business variance, but yet the fees are the same. It seems like it's a burden for an individual resident to have to pay additional monies for permitting fees where a business might be able to accommodate that a little bit better than in an individual residence. So I'm just curious why you lump it all into one and just say this is our general fee for any variance. I recognize that there's labor costs and different things like that, consulting fees, different things like that for both. But it seems like it seems like the residential people probably need a break versus a business. And I can see raising the fees on the businesses, but I can't see trying to burden the residential people who are just trying to get a variance for putting in a garage, for example. I don't understand why we would burden our residents with additional fees the same that we would a business.
I just have a question with that. The cost to the city based on a residential variance or a a business? Is there much difference? Because personally, I think it comes down to, I don't know if I want to carry the burden for my tax dollars to pay for residents to get a variance.
It's allowed in our ordinances.
Well, they can get it, but they pay for it.
Yeah, but why penalize them when it's just a residence over a business?
Because it still takes up city time?
But does it take up as much time?
That was my question.
I can tell you that it takes me the exact same amount of time to do a residential versus commercial when I work on them.
So it's the same?
Yes, the same.
And I get where you're going, I mean, because, and I think you said that based on the amount of time, I mean, the permit fee is the permit fee.
Correct.
It's the escrow part for the consultant that is kind of up and down, correct?
And
Based on what they actually work.
yes.
Okay. So,
A couple things. I did notice some cities did divide between residential and commercial and industrial, but overall, it was typically just a flat fee, either way. Additionally, in regards to my time, it is probably about the same between resident and commercial. To be full disclosure, probably the biggest difference is how complete they do their application and how, if a resident doesn't have everything put together, it's gonna take me a while. If a commercial has everything put together, it's not gonna take me as much time. So by and large, from my experience so far, it's not a huge difference.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, good discussion.
Any other comments?
I have nothing. Barb?
So you're looking for a recommendation from us, so we have to take a vote, right, Elizabeth?
Yes, you'll be making a recommendation to the council. And just so everyone is clear, we are bringing the planning and zoning fees to the planning commission, and we are required to do a public hearing. You don't do this every year. It's only when we're doing planning and zoning, so that's why we have a public hearing tonight. So we put the public on notice, because this does impact, as Bob Behrens is indicating, it does impact residents. And this was their opportunity to voice their opinion on the fees. So again, we don't do it every year, but the council has given us direction that we want to start looking at fees, and we want to make sure that we are charging appropriately. And as Chris had indicated, sometimes it's not quite fair to have ad valorem, you know what I mean, permit fees ad valorem when it's individual on individual properties that they're applying for.
Okay, so if it's a public hearing, I have to open it up to the public, correct?
mm-hmm.
So is there anybody in the audience? Well, I should read my line here, but anybody have any testimony or comments? Like to come forward inside the building, give their name and address on this issue?
How about people on the screen?
I don't see anyone. We'll open it up to the Zoom, via Zoom. Anybody up there like to make a comment? Are they all blanked out up there, Elizabeth? What's that, the red, are they just all on mute?
Yes.
They're all on mute.
Okay. Anybody want to come forward? Nobody came forward. We'll close the public hearing. Any other discussion? Having none, should we take a vote on the record? Do we have to make a motion on this, Elizabeth?
It's a recommendation, you know what I mean, on any changes or any other recommendations and changes.
Any comments? Well, I make a motion that we recommend it to the city council, the changes with the variances.
This is Barb.
Based on the associate planner's recommendation?
Yep.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
No.
Boy, this is quick.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a vote. Bob?
Bob, aye.
Barb, aye.
Ron, aye.
Chris, aye.
I have one question about it, that, only that deal about the tobacco. We never had one in there for I seen that $310. I thought, whoa, is that a one-time deal?
Tobacco licenses are yearly, and since, when we were a township, Anoka County did it for us, and that's one of the things as a township they do for us. And then when we became a city, we kind of negotiated, and then Anoka County kept doing it until this year. They got 2 additional requests, and they said, you know, it's really time you took it over. And so we had to adopt an ordinance, and now we had to adopt a fee ordinance. And Anoka, that is the exact fee Anoka County charges them.
Oh.
We just adopted the same fee that they've been paying all along.
So that's every year they pay that?
It is every year.
Well, you gotta sell a lot of cigarettes, don't you? Make that up? Of course, I can't remember the last pack. Probably 25 cents when I bought it.
Can I ask a question on some of the other?
Sure.
Does the city allow CBD and THC sales? And do we don't, or we do? It's not in the ordinances, right?
We did adopt ordinances, an ordinance that covers parts of it because it's such a new legislation. There wasn't a whole lot out there. There was no model ordinances, but we did put some things in the ordinance when we adopted the tobacco ordinance for licensure for that.
So is it allowed?
I think it's allowed if you have a permit. I think is how it's been written.
I have seen more and more cities putting a moratorium on, especially since the state had changed the THC level.
And Megan Rogers sits on a group that is drafting the model, so she said that she would keep us informed.
Good.
In that ordinance. So I think she put language in there to protect us, but knew that we were going to have to update it.
Well, and next year it'll be marijuana. Thank you. Okay.
Ready to go on to item number 9, public open forum. Is there anybody that'd like to get up and make a comment, statement? It's only 9:05 or 9:06. Here, nobody come forth. We'll go on to item number 10, Information Planning Commissioner's Report. Anybody? Bob, you have anything?
None here.
Barb, none.
Ron, none?
I just have one question. When, and it's in regards to Blake Drilling, when a conditional use permit or a permit application is applied for and they come in with their design, when they change that, don't they have to come back to the city? And not that it doesn't meet it, but don't they inform you?
They do inform us, but what will happen is they give you, you know what I mean, design elevations, and they give you, here's potentially what we're going to do, but we're going to meet the requirements. In this particular case, the conditional use permit says that they will meet the 51%, because I think that was their issue. They thought they can do something that was in the past, and they came back and they said, here's the design, we're not sure of the materials, but we'll do 51%. And in this particular case, they are going to meet the intent, but they are not going to do stone up the wall because they found that the wall would vibrate. So structurally, it doesn't work. They needed a lighter material, so they're doing wainscot. And so because they meet the code, and they said they were going to meet 51%, we generally wouldn't bring them back to go through the process again for
No, and I'm not
something of that
talking about the
change.
process, but do they notify the city that from what was approved, that the material changed or, because I'm just curious.
Generally they do, like Love's did, Bear Homes didn't, generally we know when they make changes, and they know when they're supposed to do it. In this case, I did talk to Mike. I generated the call. They didn't generate the call because they felt that they were abiding by their CUP, so they didn't think they had to call. So it's just, I think it's on our part, it's just another thing that we have to remind ourselves that to communicate when there are changes, let us know, you know what I mean, because there might have to be a site plan review. depending on the extent of the changes. And sometimes there's lack of communication between the person who brought the permit through and the person who has the contract.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to item number 11 on the agenda, Information Associate Planners Report. 11A, Information, Planning and Zoning Permit Tech Report.
So I'll just ask, really quick, for the city council meeting at the end of the year, I'm going to ask for a volunteer if someone, is able to fill in for that evening to do a planning commissioner's report. You don't all have to jump up at once, but if someone is interested in potentially doing that at the end of the year, feel free to give me a call or email me, because we'll need someone to fill in for that evening.
And just to help Frank out here, I'm supposed to do it, and I'm not going to be able to because I got my grandkids all coming. So I'm hoping maybe somebody could fill in for me.
And this is December 28th that we're talking about.
Are we talking about, I'm lost here.
The 28th is the last council meeting, and that's when,
Oh,
yeah.
that you were supposed to review.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'll take that.
Okay.
Well,
Great.
Thank you.
It'll be a perfect transition for you.
well, yeah. If my probation officer allows me out that night.
There we go. Well, I'll let
before the
Ella do
31st.
her report.
That's before the 31st.
Unless somebody else wants to jump up there.
Ella.
Oh, Ella?
Okay, yes, I do have a couple housekeeping things. Number one, I had emailed y'all a couple of weeks ago, but we are needing your attendance vouchers back. I did get one from Barb, but I haven't gotten any from the rest of you, so I do need you to get those turned in.
Do you want those in anticipation of us showing
Right,
up
that's
for the
why I
last
was
meeting?
waiting, is I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's why we haven't turned them in, because
if
we
you
still
could
have
bring-
meetings to go to yet.
Right, if you'd be able to bring them to the next meeting, then that would be great, because then the only one after that would be for you on the 28th. But otherwise, everybody else will have gotten to their last meeting.
Okay?
And if any of you need another one of the forms, let me know, I can give you one. The other thing is to please bring with you to the next meeting your planning commissioner handbook. It looks like this. For those of you who are not going to be planning commissioners anymore, we just need the folder back. For those of you who are going to be staying on, you should still bring it, because I'm going to have some updated information for you for the upcoming year. And that was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if mine's still in shape. I don't know. Reminder, attendance city council meeting on 12/14/2022. Bob?
Got it?
Thank you. And we're on item number 13. I can't believe we made it. Motion for adjournment. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Anybody want to second it?
I'll second it. This, Chris?
Do we want to discuss it a while?
Yeah, another half hour.
Over an eggnog. I'll be right back. Don't leave.
Oh, you have eggnog again.
Hi, Shelley. Hi, Sue, and hi, Rob.
Hello, guys.